Hello and welcome to our online event, Innovation in Germany, or Innovation Made in Germany. This is the third event in our ongoing celebration week. It's an online festival which celebrates the 25th anniversary of the Duitsland Institute Amsterdam. We had already two events, and the overall heading is Duitsland 2030. And this is the third event. The other two events were on the Dutch-German relations in general, and the second event was on memory culture in Germany and the Netherlands. I'm your host, I'm Mario Daniels. I'm the DAAD lecturer of the Duitsland Institute Amsterdam. I'm an historian by training, and I do research on history in science and technology. In January this year, Germany and the Dutch government and some leading industrial associations on both sides of the border signed an innovation and technology pact. We take this as the starting point to shed some light on Germany's innovation landscape, with a strong emphasis on the German-Dutch and European dimensions. With our guests, we will explore why innovation policies matter, politically, economically, technologically, and maybe even culturally. We will ask why the Dutch-German Innovation Pact was signed at this specific point in time. And we will learn how German, Dutch, and European cooperation actually works and looks like in everyday life and on the ground. We're glad that we have been able to invite two great guests to get some answers to these questions. First, we will talk to Moritz Schmid-Drechsler, head of press and culture section of the German Embassy in Den Haag. And a bit later, I will sit down with Peter van Harten, the director of ESA Germany, and a smart industry ambassador, and as such an important facilitator of Dutch-German high-tech cooperation. Between these conversations, we will have something special for you, a pitch competition in which 4 young scholars and entrepreneurs present their innovation projects. Our event is part of the Falling Walls Lab. That's a global interdisciplinary pitch competition for students, researchers, and early career professionals. This competition takes its cue from the fall of the Berlin Wall and asks one central question. Where will in the near future walls fall in science, technology, and society, and breakthroughs take place? The winner of this competition today will participate in the Global Falling Walls Lab final and the prestigious Falling Walls Conference in Berlin, where leaders from science, industry, and policy making meet and discuss which walls will be the next fall in science and society. We will watch 4 pitches today, and for the decision making, who will go to Berlin, we were able to put together a quite illustrious jury, and we have several people here who are prominent exponents of the Dutch-German innovation world. Next to Moritz Schmid-Drechsler from the German Embassy, we will welcome Mariska von der Giesen, International Entrepreneurship Professor at NHL Stenden, Selma de Mink, Scientific Director of the Max Planck Institute for Astrophysics in Garching, Joris van Doornik, CEO and co-founder of the dating app Breeze, and Katharina Haneke, a molecular plant biologist and educational specialist at Wageningen University. So that's pretty much what you can expect in the next roughly 90 minutes. At the end of our program, our jury will announce the winner of our pitch contest. So that's what we have on our list for today. And we will start with our first guest. That's Moritz Schmid-Drechsler, Head of Press and Cultural Section at the German Embassy in Den Haag. Welcome, Moritz. Nice that you're here. Great that you could make it. You will first, I think, start with an overview over the Dutch-German relations and the place of innovation in these relations. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mario, for having me. It's a great pleasure to be part of the program to celebrate the Duitsland Institute 25-year anniversary. And it is a celebration because that institute has really achieved quite a lot. So I'm very pleased to be here. Yes, I've been asked to say a few things by way of getting us started in this topic of innovation. Let me maybe start by saying that, as you already heard when you talked to Ambassador Brengelmann at one of your Jubilee events, the German-Dutch relations are very, very tight, and they are growing ever so tighter. And that in itself is not, if you look at history, it's not just something that happens. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of getting together. It's necessary for the challenges that we have before us. And in that ever-growing closeness between Germany and the Netherlands, one indicator is surely the consultations that happen on ministerial level, usually every 2 years, and the last one in 2019 in October. And why am I saying this? Because if you look at this, you already have a breakdown. First, nearly all ministers, so all topics have been discussed in these consultations. And one specific part that then led to the Innovation Pact was the topic, how can we, Germany and the Netherlands, create and stimulate our innovative approaches and our economies. And what happened then is actually that both the German Employers Union and the Dutch counterpart and tech specialists actually got together and said, wait a minute, that's actually quite a good idea. So that's something that not often happens when you have political talks. So we must have struck a nerve. And what you see from that is that you get actually a pretty detailed both analysis of the landscape in which innovation has to happen. You have an enumeration of challenges that lie ahead, and basically the sole way ahead is to innovate, to find new solutions to the problems that we're facing together. Maybe shortly on the landscape, there's two bits I want to underline briefly. There's a geopolitical landscape that is ever more important. So Europe is not standing alone and has to innovate, but there is a growing mix of other global players that speed up that process and are on their own looking for the same solutions or solutions to their problems. And what you find is that there's an interesting mix of competition and cooperation that comes from that geopolitical landscape. And it's something that we didn't have, apropos falling walls, in a bipolar world, where you had a technological leader, even though probably the East wouldn't have admitted it. So this is basically one of the settings. And then a bit maybe to the key challenges that we face or that are prominent now, where we need innovation to solve them, and we need hopefully the competition to to egg us on and the cooperation where it is possible. So just let me name a few that you find also in the Innovation Pact. So first and foremost, we are still in the corona pandemic. We saw firsthand how important science can be when you usually have vaccination or the development of a new vaccine usually takes 10 years. And we were able to actually do that in just a year. And that is very important because probably some of these events through globalization will happen in this or another form. So it's good to know that both in the Innovation Pact you have a specific focus on health issues, but also we could show that our scientific capabilities are up to scratch and actually faster than we expected to solve such a problem. Another one that is frequently discussed is digitalization or Industry 4.0, 4.0, yes, got it. Digitalization is an interesting aspect because it permeates right down to the individual, and it basically transforms societies and how they work and live. And this digitalization will offer us new forms of entrepreneurship or will have a shift. They will also have major implications on privacy, on security assessments, and so on and so forth. Another one would be climate change, for example, where you can see that borders for this global problem don't really, well, they matter politically, but they don't matter in the analysis of the problem. And cooperation, as I mentioned before, in that respect is very, very important. I think that is basically a layout. So what I try to do is basically say the Innovation Pact comes out of an atmosphere of ever-growing German-Dutch cooperation. It comes out of a geopolitical setting, and the common denominator of finding answers to our common problems.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent overview over what this Innovation and Technology Pact actually says. And we see it, there's a lot in there, right? It's a short document, it's only a few pages, but it says quite a lot, and it says really a lot about the aims the Dutch and the Germans try to accomplish together. You mentioned the geopolitical background. Do you think that's really one of the biggest pressures to cooperate? How would you assess that? Is pressure really important to cooperate? I mean, they cooperate anyway. So what does the geopolitical setting, China on the one hand and the US on the other hand, actually change?
Well, I do think if you look at the European Union and the Rome Treaty, there is this ambition to have an ever closer union. So yes, I agree with you that probably there is a self-sufficient drive to work closer together, especially with Germany and the Netherlands. But the geopolitical circumstances do create another layer to it, another impetus, basically, because it shows that the classical problem of, if you look at it in economic terms, for example, the first mover advantage. So, or politically, we will all depend on our ability, basically, to have self-sufficient infrastructure. And when that comes together with technology, we better have our ship in order. So one example, and it's not only about the competition, it's just if we need services more and more as a basic infrastructure to function as economies, then we should have a system that we can actually depend on and that we can develop further. For example, Gaia X, yeah? I mean, it takes us a while, I know, but cloud capacities, cloud systems, they are absolutely necessary now. They are a backbone for a lot of technology companies and production processes. And of course, it's also it's important that we just don't only depend on the facilities that they are, but that we actually find a system that helps us to move forward.
Yeah. I mean, I get why there is such an emphasis on competition, but isn't that kind of interesting? Because on the one hand, the Americans are still friends, and they're still the closest allies of most European countries within the EU and NATO. And on the other hand, China is also one of the biggest economic partners. So how do you reconcile this kind of contradiction? Or, I mean, it's only seemingly a contradiction, but
yes.
How do you reconcile that?
I mean, I would underscore what you just said. I think it's not a contradiction at all. Mm-hmm. It's different roles that are in complex relationships. You as a historian probably know that neither the European or the transatlantic partnership was ever without any flaws and pushbacks. That was one of the major contributing factors for Europe to move ahead on some forms without the one, so meaning competition. It's a very productive and creative force. Schumpeter in economics made that point very clearly, and I think you find that also in international relations. And then and if you look at this way, you will always have these two factors. So in either international relations, so I don't see it as a contradiction at all. It's a matter of fact.
Yeah, and I think that's actually the interesting part. And you could also look at the German-Dutch relationship in this regard, that obviously competition and cooperation mix in a very complex and sometimes contradictory way. That doesn't mean that they can't coexist. Actually, they always coexist, and they kind of inform each other, I would argue. I'm afraid we have to wrap it up already, because we have to move on to our Falling Walls Lab. But thank you so much for this inspiring beginning of our conversation and our event today. And we will see you a little bit later again, because you're part of the jury of the Falling Walls Lab jury. So thank you so much for this conversation. So the next point in our program is, as I just alluded to, the Falling Walls Lab and our competition here in Amsterdam. As I said in the very beginning, this is part of a larger pitch competition. It's actually a global and international pitch competition. And it has become something like an institution in the world of innovation and startup economy. This event today will basically lead to the finals in Berlin. And then there is another round for the winner of our competition today that will actually lead to the meeting of a lot of high-ranking people in the science and technology world. We have 4 pitches today, and the idea is that we will watch the pitches as short YouTube presentations. Each of these pitches is roughly 2.5 minutes long, and the idea is that our 4 candidates will present their idea, their scientific technological idea that will sometimes also lead to a specific product that can be marketed. We have 4 candidates, as I said, Joris van Heiningen from UC Louvain, Ahmed Khalil from Elemental Labs, Amar Kamat from University of Groningen, and Fabiola Polly also from University of Groningen. Welcome, everyone. Nice to see you. Welcome to our competition today. I hope you're not too excited or nervous about this. So the idea is that your 4 pitches will be screened now one by one. We will start with Joris, then Ahmed, Ama, and Fabiola. Each pitch will be shown, and then there will be a very short Q&A afterwards. So our jury members will ask 1 question, 2 questions max. And then basically the jury will deliberate, and in the end of our program today, the winner will be announced. So I would say we start with the first pitch. That's Joris van Heiningen.
Welcome to Breaking the Wall of Terrestrial Seismicity. We will be talking about gravitational waves, the final prediction of Einstein's theory of general relativity. These waves were detected in 2015 for the first time, giving us a new window on the universe. And here's how. So here you see 2 black holes revolving around each other, merging into one, sending out a pulse of gravitational waves. This pulse, once it arrives on Earth, looks like this, and is very tiny, as you can see here. It is even smaller than a proton. So the effect that you see there on Earth is vastly exaggerated, because this wobbling of the Earth, we really need a gravitational wave detector, as you can see there. This is a kilometer scale laser setup, and it will convert this stretching and squeezing into these pulses of light. Now, these pulses of light you see there in the green trace in the graph below. This was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2017. And this signal, you can see it's a fraction of a second long. So this multiple oscillations per second really means it's a high frequency signal. So if you want to measure low frequency signals and study, for example, supermassive black holes, you need to do something else, because on Earth, we can only shield against the high frequency part of the Earth's motion. And we do that by suspending the mirrors, as you can see here and here in the photograph. And the main motion we cannot shield against is the oceanic activity. So these are the waves pounding on the shore. So where do we go? We go to the moon. So on the moon, we can deploy an update of a sensor that I developed during my PhD. We make it slightly more sensitive and use the wobbling of the moon, just like you saw in the movie, to now deploy an array of these sensors and directly detect the motion of the moon, and thus detect low frequency gravitational waves. As we can see here, so here you see on the right, the best we can do on Earth. And if we want to break this seismic wall that we have here on Earth, we now have our proposal for the moon. And this is very nice if you want to measure these low frequency gravitational waves, but we can also prospect for lunar mining, find ice at the South Pole for a lunar base, and do lunar geophysics. So why wait?
Okay, great. Questions?
Yeah, thanks. That's very exciting what you're proposing here. I'm a little biased because I'm an astrophysicist, but sticking with this is a big project, right? I'm interested, what would it take for this to become reality? And I'm wondering to what extent it would require falling walls and collaboration between countries. What do you see as the biggest risks towards bringing this to reality?
Well, I think I first want to sketch the team that we are having now. It's like 80 scientists at the moment. And of course, there are multiple disciplines and things like that. But so for me, it's very new to deploy something in space. You know, I've built a sensor and I put it somewhere and that's it. But deploying something in space is very different.
And then there's the point of getting it there. And I think there is a big problem with, or a big challenge to collaborate with, for example, the Americans or the Chinese, which we're trying to get into our team. You see things like the powering of the station, which you could do in a nuclear way, but then the European Space Agency doesn't launch nuclear things up in the air. So I think those kinds of things that are new to me really pose, or that I see as a big challenge.
And if I may, I can see how people might be excited about mining in the moon, and you showed a few other applications. Why would most people here care about the black holes that you want to measure there?
Well,
I care, but we should maybe explain it.
Well, I think the black holes as such, there's only a few people in the world that care about why they are, all the different characteristics there. But the technology necessary to measure these black holes, that is very important for all of us. So, for example, the seismic sensors that were developed within our field decades ago, those maybe are now in machines in a company where my brother works, ASML, and that's why you can now print chips so small that you can have a phone with so much computing power in your pocket. And I can go on and on and on about all the things that our field have produced within science, but also within these examples that I just gave.
Okay, thank you so much. The second pitch is Ahmed Khalil. Let's have a look.
Hello everyone, my name is Ahmed Khalil, founder and CEO of Elementa Labs. And today I'm excited to share with you how we are breaking the walls of the biomedical research. Did you know that the biomedical research is facing a huge reproducibility crisis? A study conducted on 1,500 researchers showed that 70% of the researchers not able to reproduce their colleagues' experiments, while more than 50% were not able to reproduce their own experiments. Now I want you to imagine the outcome of this study on a global scale of 2.3 million researchers around the globe. This contributes to failure of delivering the most potential therapies to the market, lowering the credibility of the scientific data, and waste of around $240 billion a year. Our studies conducted on 200 researchers around Europe showed that inefficient documentation has a key element to this huge problem. Researchers use two tools for documentation in the lab: paper notebooks inside of the lab and electronic lab notebooks outside of the lab. And that's because of the hygiene rules in the lab. And after a long day of conducting experiments and writing down your notes, you go outside of the lab, writing down everything again into your electronic lab notebook, doing double the work. This inefficient process consumes up to 30% of researchers' time, lower the quality of their data capturing by 70%, form distractions, and lower their productivity in the lab. That's why we created Elementa. Elementa is the first voice interactive phone application for biomedical researchers in the lab. It enables them to do a hands-free documentation directly into their electronic lab notebook outside of the lab just by the power of their voice. This is one of the researchers we recently helped with Elementa.
Hey Elementa, take a note. At the start of the experiment, the cells were around 70% confluenced. They look round and healthy.
And by the end of the experimental session, all your data are documented. In our pilot project with 20 researchers around the Netherlands, we were able to save up to 30% of their time wasted on documentation, higher the quality of data capturing by 40%, and most importantly, make them happier and more productive. With Elementa, we are aiming to accelerate drug innovation in a more sustainable and efficient way. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. That was Ahmed Khalil. And I see already that Katharina has a question.
Yeah, I'm actually very excited about this. I have a question because I'm from plant science and we are hardly transitioning from hard copy lab books to digital, and now you want to make a step even with your voice recording. So how do you think you can motivate scientists to do this?
So this is definitely one of the challenges we are facing at the moment because there are definitely some resistance to adopting electronic lab notebooks, and still so many universities were using paper notebooks or the hard documentation, as you mentioned. So one of our collaboration steps that we will also use our technology in terms of AI to scan all the archive documentation that have been done before and transfer it into a digital form. So even researchers can also use this kind of documented data, because we also know that because of this hard documentation process, a lot of researchers are not able to access previously done data, which is really important in such a trial and error experimentation process.
All right, if I can follow up.
Yeah, of course.
So in terms of sharing, how easy would it be to share your notes with other scientists? Because in some cases that's very relevant. So if I want to share with a different lab or within the lab, have you considered that?
Yeah, we are definitely considering these kind of features, of collaboration features. So within the same group of scientific research, we are also planning to, based on the choices of each researcher, can show or share their own scientific data or experimental research data with their colleagues in the lab, or even if they are also collaborating on a global level with different labs around the world. We also like integrating a lot of features which can enable researchers and group research who are collaborating in different projects to share their data together as well. And in the future, hopefully, what I would imagine Elementa is having this full experience of knowledge-based voice assistant where researchers can easily ask questions to it and answer it back. So it can facilitate and eliminate all the side tasks for researchers in the lab and eventually enhance the productivity and the overall research and drug innovation process.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ahmed and also Darina.
Nice questions.
So then we are at our third pitch, Amar Kamat from the University of Groningen. Let's have a look at that.
Good afternoon. Today I will introduce to you our efforts at breaking down the walls of flow automation in ICUs using solutions inspired by nature. Now what we see here is a scene from a typical ICU ward. A woman is hooked up to a number of fluid management devices. Specifically, we see an infusion pump on the top right that is pumping fluids, for example, drugs or nutrients, into her body. And then we have fluid coming out of her body in the form of urine on the bottom left. Now, it is fairly evident that in the critical care environment, accurate and frequent measurements of these flow rates is crucial. This maintains proper fluid balance in the patient and avoids medication errors due to flow rate inaccuracies. The current standard of care, even in developed countries such as the Netherlands, dictates that the nurse manually check the flow rates at each bed. Now, this places an undue burden on nurses and also makes the readings prone to errors. For instance, up to 60% of adverse drug events are related to IV infusion errors. Now, this begs the question, why are these measurements still conducted manually? Well, the low flow rates, which are often on the order of milliliters per hour, and the small catheter sizes that are around 3 millimeters in inner diameter, make flow sensing a technical challenge in the ICU environment. To solve this problem, we take inspiration from the blind cavefish. As you can see in the video, this fish has no problems navigating through a complex obstacle course, even without the aid of vision. Now, nature has solved this problem by developing an extra organ on the fish's skin called the lateral line. Essentially, this consists of many hair-like structures that bend in response to the flow disturbances around it, thus alerting the fish to dangers such as prey or obstacles in its vicinity. These biological flow sensors are both small and sensitive to very low flow velocity. In other words, they are perfect to automate flow measurement in the ICUs. We took inspiration from the blind cavefish to develop small and ultra-sensitive flow sensors. The sensors are fabricated using standard techniques that ensure scalability and low cost per sensor. Our vision is to realize smart ICU wards that display vital flow rates automatically, thus reducing medication errors, mitigating nurse workload, and improving the state of healthcare. We are currently in the process of incorporating a startup company called Sensilia, a name that is inspired by the fish head, to bring our research to the medical devices market and thus breaking down the wall of automating flow measurements in the ICU. Thank you for your attention. Good afternoon. Today I will introduce to you our efforts at breaking down the walls of flow automation.
Amma, thank you so much for your pitch. I see that Katharina is already in the wings. She has a question, maybe even two.
Yes, thank you very much for the pitch. It's very intriguing that you take the fish model to help in hospitals. I want you to think a little bit bigger, wilder. What do you think if you can manage this part? How much wider can you go with your research, and where do you see other applications of this technology?
Yeah, thanks. So this technology, we really see it as a platform technology. And for me and my co-founder, it's very important for us to have the most amount of impact, which we see in the biomedical field. So we targeted these IV flow rate monitoring and the urine output flow rate monitoring applications. But our sensors can in principle be used anywhere. So they can be used, for example, for pipeline leakage monitoring. They could be used in the oil and gas industry. They could be used in other biomedical applications, such as, for example, for spirometers to detect pulmonary disorders. They could be used in autonomous vehicle navigation and so on and so forth. So they were originally developed actually to really mimic how the fish navigates itself, which is for underwater vehicle navigation. And then we realized that, oh, these sensors are actually very small and very sensitive. So why not have the most impactful application, which is in the biomedical field?
All right, very exciting. So what do you see yourself as the biggest obstacle within your scientific journey to get this done? What do you think is the hardest part?
Yeah, so what we want to do is, when we want to commercialize these sensors, they have to be, we are trying to make it disposable, which means that when the nurse integrates these sensors into the catheters, they should be thrown away with the catheter. So these sensors should be disposable and hence low cost. Now, the couple of players that we see in the market today do have sensors like this, but they are very expensive. And when we are talking to doctors and procurement departments, we realize that we need to be at least 10 times cheaper than that. Now, we are pretty confident that we can do it, but of course there is a difference between feeling confident and delivering on that. So I think that's our biggest challenge.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Amma, and thank you, Katharina, again. And last but not least, pitch number 4, Fabiola Polli, University of Groningen.
Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. How many of you know how much textile waste is produced yearly globally? How many of you would like to drive a car that uses biodiesel instead of regular fossil fuel? Each year, the fashion industry produces and sells between 80 and 150 billion garments globally. At the same time, nearly 92 million tons of textile waste is created. 85% of textile waste is incinerated or ends up in landfills, where it takes 200 plus years to degrade. As it decomposes, it leaches toxic chemical and dyes into the groundwater or soil. It is also responsible for 10% of global carbon dioxide emission each year. The production of textile is expected to rise by 63% by 2030. Alongside, the world consumption of fossil fuel is set to nearly double by 2060, as the global economy expands and living standards rise, increasing global demands for alternative biofuels. I'm Fabiola Polli, the founder of BioFashion Tech, a technology that makes use of a scalable biotech process to recycle textile waste and generates a valuable compound for biofuel production. Furthermore, plastic fiber and dyes that are usually blended in the textile can be recycled and sold to upcycle as many resources as we can. The BioFashion Tech process is an innovation, and it carries a variety of potential benefits, like it is versatile and can be applied on different raw materials like viscose and paper, cost-effective due to the zero-cost raw material made from waste, scalable due to the abundance of raw material in its production, environmental friendly since it reduces the amount of energy and chemicals that are usually used to degrade fibers. The technology has been validated in a lab in a small relevant environment, and a collaboration with the paper industry has been started to redefine the technology. We are now open for investment funding to run a pilot project. As a result, BioFashion Tech brings 85% of textile waste that currently ends up into landfills into the circular economy and provides a new type of biofuel made from non-food resources, alleviating competition with food production and enabling the transition to an advanced circular economy in which the reuse of products and raw materials is maximized and value destruction is minimized.
Okay. Thank you, Fabiola. I see that we have actually two people who want to ask questions, Mariska and also Joris. Maybe Mariska should start. Mariska,
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Fabiola, for this nice pitch. I really like it because I'm very interested in the topic at all. And I'm wondering, in textile waste, two questions actually. How to prevent textile waste at all? So what can we do beforehand? So maybe there are also a few points you can measure or you can indicate. And what the concrete output when you have a circular economy and you reuse or not recycle but really reuse all the material. How can we see that how this works? Yeah, is the quality the same? Is the fabric the same? So please go more into detail about this.
Thank you, Mariska, for your questions. And well, I'm working also on another startup, so I'm also founder of another startup that is still related to this one, and is about educating people on the importance of being sustainable in the fashion industry. So basically, it's a double goal. The first platform is about education and providing tools that can help people on the daily life. It's called Chic Fashion. So basically, help people to be more mindful on their purchases and to do sustainable purchases. So basically, offer a way to buy second part, because basically, if you educate people and you provide tools to reuse the resources that they have, you're already mitigating the problem. Then, if you still have the problem, because you will still have it, then there is the biotech part that will help you on the second step. So basically, what I'm trying to create is a all-around approach that tackle this problem from the beginning till the end, basically. And it goes, as I say, making all the resources that we have always available and making them circulating. And for your second question about the quality of the textile and so on, I always say quality over quantity. So for sure, when you start to reblend fibers, they lose some quality because the fiber gets short and so on. But we have to educate people on buying one good item instead of tens of low quality, and then invest more money on that good item, and then and then basically do more mindful choices and keep giving value to what they have.
Yeah, but then you're focusing on the first step and not on the last step.
In the last step, basically, when you are using those resources that they cannot reuse anymore, because at a certain point the textile is not good anymore, you can still give value to it, because basically with this technology you get a valuable product that can use to produce biofuel. And this is very important, because nowadays the problem to make biofuel is the supply chain, so that competes with food. So we are providing a new raw material that doesn't compete with the food. So and it creates a stable supply chain for biofuel production. Additionally, we are recovering the dyes and the polyester to make new garments. So for fashion industry that will collaborate with us, they will give us the unwanted clothes, and we will give them back new polyester fiber or new dyes that they can reuse. And for the customer, we are providing education, knowledge, and a solution for things that they cannot deal with. They cannot deal anymore, basically. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Joris,
yes,
please.
Right. Yeah. First of all, it's super nice to see all of these bright minds working on these things that really help humanity further, and that you all reserve your energy for these things. Fabiola, for your innovation, I was wondering, because I think there must be other parties that do similar things. in this field. How do you look at that? Are you planning to compete, collaborate? What's your strategy with working with other parties that do similar
Yeah,
things?
well, nowadays there is another company from Germany that what they do, they recycle polyester fibers. So basically from garments, they recycle the polyester fiber, they make new polyester products. But we use a different technology basically, and this technology can be applied on many more fibers. So there are not actually any other companies that they do what we do in this way, because basically our can tackle different type of fibers. So more natural one and also not the natural one, while the other companies, as I mentioned before, they are more focusing on the polyester fibers type. And ideally is to, in the future to have collaboration to, we provide polyester. So we could think about a collaboration by reusing these polyester fibers.
Is it also protected, your intellectual property?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
For the pitch and also for the questions. So these were the 4 pitches we had. It was handy because you didn't not only see the 4 candidates, you also saw all the members of our jury. The jury will now get together and think which pitch was actually the most convincing. Maybe I should quickly repeat who the jury is, just in case that you didn't catch it. So Moritz Schmid-Drechsler, you saw at the very beginning as my conversation partner, is part of the jury. Mariska van der Gießen, International Entrepreneurship Professor at NHL Stenden. Selma de Mink from the Max Planck Institute for Astrophysics in Garching, where she is the scientific director. Joris van Doring, the CEO and co-founder of the dating app Breeze, and Katharina Haneke, biologist and educational specialist at Wageningen University. So they will now go in a separate room and probably fight for something like 15 minutes. In the meantime, we will move on and we will meet our second guest, our second conversation for today. The first one at the beginning was something like a big picture political framework conversation about innovation in the Dutch, German, and also European and geopolitical context. The second conversation will continue what we have started there. Our second guest is Peter van Harten. He is director of ISA Germany, that's a software company. And he's also Smart Industry Ambassador. What that means, we will learn in a second. Let's welcome Peter van Harten. I think he is already online. Peter, welcome to our conversation today. Thank you for making this possible. I would like to start with a very simple question because I'm curious. What exactly is a Smart Industry Ambassador?
So first of all, thank you for inviting me, and respect for everybody online with this temperature on the late time in the week. The Smart Industry Ambassador is someone that represents, is the ambassador for the smart industry in the Netherlands. And as an ambassador, I actually focus on, I would say, 2 elements. First of all, how can we, with our partner neighboring countries, for instance, Germany, which is a very important partner for us, how can we, by creating clever partnerships, make sure that we push the digital transformation and our transformation agenda in the Netherlands, but also in Germany. So that's the one side. So how can we collaborate, exchange best practices, create clever collaborations? And on the other side, also part of this ambassadorship is to promote the Dutch high-tech sector in other countries, for instance in Germany. And I hear you thinking, is that still needed? Yes, that is unfortunately still needed. Many people still don't know what kind of cool products and capabilities we have to offer in the Netherlands, and that we also can develop joint products and services in the collaboration. For instance, in Germany, sometimes for high-tech technology, they look into other directions like the US, Japan, France, Switzerland. And I would say, look at us, look at the Netherlands, join our initiatives, and yeah, we would like to do business, and there are lots of opportunities also in the collaboration between Netherlands and Germany, which will create jobs and businesses.
Yeah, very interesting, Peter. But usually an ambassador is sent out by a country to another country, right? So what is the political framework of this kind of position? Who's sending you?
So there is no political framework, to be honest. So it is a voluntary position which was created at the end of 2018. I am representing the Smart Industry program, and with that the Smart Industry companies. It's quite a broad spectrum. It's not only the manufacturing, it's also, for instance, the building industry that is applying manufacturing technologies. It's not from one to one country, so it's from one to many countries. And I think the main goal is to have a structured dialogue and to promote collaboration, because that's what we need, at least in Europe. We should not forget that for many companies, competition is maybe coming outside of Europe. And maybe we can discuss that later on, that aspect as well. But my goal as an ambassador is to strengthen ties, to create clever alliances, and to make sure that we have the best industry in Europe servicing our companies worldwide.
Yeah, thank you. What exactly are smart industries? I mean, you mentioned it's a broad spectrum of different kinds of companies. What do they have in common, and what does this term smart industry actually signify?
Yeah, so Smart Industry as a program, so the Smart Industry program is a national program for the digitization of our industry. It has the industry partners on board, the Ministry of Economic Affairs, the Chamber of Commerce, the employers organization, and our main goal is to support SMEs in the transition, actually the adoption of innovation. So we're today here to look at new technologies, and we hope that many SMEs later on will also apply the technologies. We started the program in 2014, just after Germany started with the Industry 4.0 initiative. But the Smart Industry is a little bit broader than the Industry 4.0 initiative. It also, for instance, has the whole aspect of data sharing as part of our program. And that becomes more and more important. If you collaborate in value chains, which is very important, especially for the Netherlands, with an open economy, and we have to collaborate. We are only able to produce high quality and high-tech products if we collaborate, because the complexity is increasing tremendously. And for that, you need to share a lot of data. And actually, in the Netherlands, we do have quite some knowledge about how to do that, how to make the appointments between the companies and OEMs and suppliers on standards and technology, and to do that in a secure way. So that's an aspect that is also very important for Smart Industry from the very first beginning. And it's a development we see now also in Germany and other countries. So Germany, for instance, started together with France last year, the Gaia X initiative to create a European cloud and data infrastructure, which is very important for us. But the data sharing part towards the valorization of innovation and also the crossovers to other sectors, I think that's very important. And with a crossover, I mean, for instance, how can we apply the technologies that we use in manufacturing and other sectors like the building industry? So there are some examples where Dutch companies collaborate together and are able to build a house within 48 hours instead of 3 months, applying the manufacturing technologies, Smart Industry technologies, reducing the CO2 footprint by just industrialize the building industry. And that's an example of many other industries where we would actually apply the Smart Industry into other sectors. So it's a broad spectrum.
Okay, so Is there a difference between Industry 4.0 and smart industry, or is it pretty much the same? Just to orient our German and Dutch viewers.
It has, so the kernel, I think it's the same. If you look at the Smart Industry program and, for instance, other initiatives which are similar in Germany, I think there are some differences. The approach in the Netherlands is in many cases bottom-up. So companies come to us and say, can you help us with a certain technology? If we are able to adopt this technology, if we can implement it, if we can do it as a supply chain, then we are so much better positioned on the market that will create a lot of new opportunities. So this bottom-up approach, bringing together companies, having their business in focus. So how can we be successful? And also creating ecosystems. I think that is slightly different to, for instance, the German situation, where it's more top-down, and we don't see that ecosystem that much. Ecosystem looking for companies bringing together to supply, to produce a product, and also directly supply to the market. So I think that's a very important aspect. And the other aspect I would like to mention is that we like to experiment. So we feel that experimenting together helps to adopt innovation, to understand the capabilities of the technology, to better understand how to apply it, but also to understand how to train the people. So on the one hand, you have the innovation, but they will only be productive if people can also apply it. So the whole skills element is also a very important element in the program.
Great. So the framework you describe is a European framework, right? Do you have a more global outlook, or is it really mainly focused on European companies and European states?
We're also having interactions with Japan, for example, so it has a global scope. But of course, and also due to what happened after the COVID pandemic, we have a slightly different view on supply chains, for instance, and how we should structure the supply chains, also related to circular economy, how the industry can become more energy neutral. So yes, we have a worldwide program. We look at several developments, but the main focus, I would say, is in Europe. How to strengthen in Europe the industry, actually from two perspectives. Can we create new value chains? So we're now looking together with Germany, for example, on where are the investments going? Where do we see startups? Where are the what's in the research papers? What is in the papers of the European Union? What's in the smart specialization strategies? And we are building a dashboard at the moment, so that they can do fact-based research on where do we see the developments of the future, which direction should we look in, which companies are investing, and how can we create new value chains that actually will be the future business for Europe. That's the one thing. And on the other hand, what kind of competences do we need? What kind of companies do we need? What do we have to do to make these supply chains stronger and more resilient? And for instance, we started a Dutch-German field lab in the beginning of this year, focusing on digital twin and AI in a supply chain. And we bring the knowledge out of the automotive industry from the state of Baden-Württemberg, together with the knowledge we have, for instance, in the south of the Netherlands, around collaborating in the value chain. And how can a digital twin in combination with artificial intelligence help to have a more digitized supply chain? And I'll give you an example. If the company ASML, which we all know about the chip discussion at the moment, this company ASML has strategic partnerships with German companies like Carl Zeiss and Trumpf. These are large German companies, and they produce specific products for ASML to build these machines and where you can produce chips with. And the complexity is so high that ASML cannot do that alone, so they need each other, they need the partnerships. but there are also many other companies involved. And how are you going to exchange data between the companies? If that's all manually, then we have a lot of overhead and cost, and it will not be successful. We are not competitive at the end of the day. So now looking at, can we use the digital twin technology so we all can work on the same model? And if we have the model from the very first beginning, we could also use it for maybe the support, the maintenance, and also maybe at the end of the day for the recycling. So we have a much more holistic view on the collaboration in the value chain, how we can lower costs, how we can lower the CO2 footprint and be more successful. And that's the way we're actually structuring the collaboration between, for instance, the Netherlands and Germany. So very straightforward, looking at how can we help each other to become better, where the very well known 1 + 1 is not 2 or 3, but maybe 5.
Yeah, very interesting. One question I have in mind is if you think about digital industry, the first thing you have in mind are Google, Amazon, and others of those internet giants, right? You are mainly focusing on manufacturing. Is there a specific reason why you don't look so much at services, so to speak? Is manufacturing really at the heart of what you're doing? That's what I'd like to know.
Yeah, I would say in German "jein." So it's not. So it's the combination. So the smart industry, and it's a tough definition to be honest, but it's the combination of hard and software. I would say it's the combination of services and manufacturing. So at the end of the day, and I can give you an example. A Dutch company is already making coffee machines for over 100 years. And they wanted to go to the US and they wanted to sell the machines. And they said, okay, but if you have a totally different coffee culture in the US, so we like to go to Starbucks or Tim Hortons and buy a huge amount of coffee. And what they did is they changed their model. They still produce machines, but they make them intelligent. So they have all the connections. And they're selling coffee now. So they don't sell machines, they sell coffee. And they know exactly which flavor is popular in which area and when they need to do the maintenance. So at the end of the day, the right, fresh, brewed, delicious coffee is coming out of the machines. And by doing so, they are much more successful than they were. And they're growing very fast in the US. And what you see here is they still have the core competences. I still have to produce this machine with all the technology, but I'm adding a lot of sensor technology. I'm adding a cloud technology because I need to have the data. I have to think about how to handle the data, who owns the data. Is that the owner of the machine? Is that the provider? I need to have an insight in which coffee I should buy. I automatically want to have some algorithms going and checking when is the exact moment to do the maintenance. And all these aspects together is smart industry. So we are, I think, slowly moving into the combination of many technologies. And that's where the Dutch are very good at, the multidisciplinary approach of several technologies building together in one solution together with a group of companies in an open innovation culture.
Yeah, that's a fascinating example. Your examples show how and where cooperation actually works. Are there challenges actually to cooperation crossing national borders, especially between the Netherlands and Germany? I mean, the way you describe it, it's smooth sailing. Is it always smooth sailing?
No, of course not. It's also a bumpy road, but if you want something to happen, and that's the way we look at it, is that we try to create a coalition of the willing. So we are looking at cluster organizations, at other partners representing companies in Germany, in a certain region. We approach them and say, hey, do you have the same issues as we have? And would it make sense to join forces? So we actually approach them on Augenhöhe, as we say it in German. So we stopped many years ago just telling how good we are. We had changed our approach and said, okay, let's sit next to each other like we are sitting on a table discussing our problems and say, I have some core competences, you have some core competences. What would happen if we bring them together and maybe not only keep it in the Netherlands and Germany, but maybe also extend it to other countries like France, Italy, Belgium, because we need this collaboration. We see more and more that's an increase of complexity in the market, and not only from a technology perspective, but also from a perspective of doing fair business. We have a shortage of workers, our productivity is still too low. If you put that all together, it becomes very complex, and for many companies it's not possible to do that all alone. So we need the collaboration in Europe, and to be honest, I think it's the strength of Europe to use this diversity between the different countries. So we have our strengths, we have our differences, and we should use that more. That's my personal opinion. Of course, many people say maybe the European industry is already lost. It's a lost case, and China is much faster. And yeah, of course, we can still learn a lot of China. China can still learn a lot of us. But I think if we use the diversity and the competences we have in Europe, and we bundle that in the right way, as I described it in the coalition of the willing principle, I think that could be the future for Europe.
Yeah. So what you just described about the challenges of cooperation, I'm an academic, so I'm actually not a practitioner at all. And in academic readings, you can still have a lot of texts that focus specifically on national innovation systems. And they basically emphasize the importance of national frameworks, of national institutions, and also of national cultural differences. Do you see that these factors play also a role in Dutch-German technological relations? So are there really specific national problems on both sides, cultural, institutional problems?
I think yes. Of course, every country has to also think about their own jobs, their own economy. But I see more and more that the landscape is changing. That has to do with the developments I just described, the increasing complexity. But every country also has its own strengths, history, culture. So in the Netherlands, we are very good in offshore and offshore technology, for example, and in high-tech equipment. And we're not that good in other sectors. And I think the innovation ecosystem in Europe is also changing over time, where we more and more come to the conclusion that it makes sense to use this diversity without limiting the national issues or the national opportunities. I think that's the key thing that we more and more see now, and which I also promote in Europe. You don't have to give away all your things in a collaboration. It's a give and take in a certain, it should be in balance. But if you put in front the challenge we have, in many cases we have the same challenge, it makes sense to join forces instead of doing it all alone and try to reinvent the wheel in all the different countries, because that takes a lot of time, costs a lot of money. We don't have that time and money because the developments are going so fast that it only makes sense to collaborate.
Yeah, I like that you have this very positive spin on this cooperative relationship between the Dutch and the Germans, but also between European partners. But maybe as the final question, let's look a little bit into the future. Earlier I talked to Moritz Schmid-Drechsler, and we talked about the competition of between Europe on the one hand and China and the US on the other hand. So that's obviously one of the challenges European innovation systems face. Do you see that as one of the key challenges, or are there other challenges? And if so, how can Europeans address those challenges?
Yeah, this question has two sides, I think. So yes, of course, we look into what's happening in China and what's happening in the US, and we have now a new administration in the US, and of course they are more European friendly, but they still promote the buy American products strategy. If you look at China, what's going on there, we of course have to think about Europe and what's happening in Europe, but it's not one or the other. So I'm actually quite positive about the fact that we in Europe can still be world leading in certain aspects. We should not try to build the new Google in Europe. That doesn't make sense. But we have, for instance, a very good and well-developed industry in Europe. And if you add the digital capabilities and strengths to that, and if you're able to transform that into new business models, like the example with the coffee machine, and I have many other examples, I think that we still have the opportunity to really make a difference here. As I said already, I think we can still learn a lot as well from the US and from China. So I'm positive, to be honest.
That's nice that we don't have to talk about doom and gloom all the time. Do you see other challenges besides the obvious geopolitical constellation?
Of course, we have a very aging population in Europe, and so that's a concern. We know that our productivity is actually too low, so we made some calculations, for instance, for the Netherlands, but I know that's in Germany similar. We need actually 200% or even more productivity increase, labor productivity increase in the next 10 to 15 years to flatten out the aging workforce. And that can only be done in collaboration and with using technology. So if we, as companies, are not able to adopt this technology in this accelerated pace, then we have a problem. So one of the concerns we have, and there's also one of the discussions we have with Germany, we signed in January this year a Dutch-German innovation and technology agreement, where we said, okay, we'd like to, as two countries, intensify our collaboration in innovation and technology. And the skills aspect, for example, is one of the topics we have in discussions on. How can we work together to create programs that support especially the existing workforce, as they have to work longer on the one hand and also have to apply new technologies. And that's a concern which is it's quite huge, and we don't have the solution for that yet. And the other concern is there's still a group of companies that is not actually adopting the digital transformation as we would like it to be. And that's also one of the things we are having discussions on a European but also Dutch-German level. How can we join forces so that as many as possible companies come on board and adopt this transformation, don't see it as a real challenge, but see it as an opportunity. Of course, we have the climate transition in Germany. We had the Klimaschutzgesetz, where also was defined we have to reach our goals faster and even more intense. We have all read about what happened with Shell in the Netherlands. I think that is showing that this circular transformation is also very important, and that's where we also have an opportunity for the industry. So the industry can really help to transform this climate, to fast track this climate transition, because the goal of smart industry at the end of the day is to do stuff with less amount of material, less amount of energy, less amount of people, and in a sense is that the same thing that you would like to do with the climate transition. So also, we do see the challenges, but we also see huge opportunity, and we need to join forces between the countries to overcome the challenges, and then we can have a very bright future.
That's actually the very, very positive note to end on. Peter, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. Thank you, that was great. have a nice day.
Yeah, and good luck. And keep me on track. I would
Okay,
say.
thank you. Thank you. Bye. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye.
Okay, now it's time to go back to our Falling Walls lab. Our jury is still in next door, but I'm sure they will join us in a few minutes again. So, as I said, we will announce today where the winner among our 4 pitchers will be. And the winner will actually go for a multi-day stay to Berlin. There will be something like 100 finalists, so it's a big event. And everyone who is there and is a winner will have a broad extended program that includes a coaching session, network dinner, experts workshops, on a broad range of topics, such as career development, entrepreneurial skills, academic publishing, and so on. And then there will be a global final. And there the finalists compete to become the breakthrough winner in the emerging talents category of Falling Walls, taking home the title and prize money and receiving the opportunity to pitch their idea once again on the grand stage of the Falling Walls conference, which throughout the day hosts leading experts, change makers, and luminaries, including Nobel Prize winners and Leibniz Prize winners. So that's at stake. And I hope we have a winner.
We do have a winner.
Okay, that's very good. So let's see who the winner is. Moritz, the floor is yours.
Yes. So let me start by thanking everybody that participated and was willing to offer their ideas. I know how sensible that can be and how exposed you can sometimes feel when you pitch your ideas. And we really in the jury had a hard time because the pitches were very diverse, both in scope, in their respective home field, so which science they are coming out of. We didn't come to a decision easily, but we came to it anonymously. And I'm happy to say that Joris van Heiningen has won this Falling Walls Lab here in Amsterdam. So congratulations.
Yours. Please have a seat again.
And should I, or will you?
I don't know.
Come on.
Thank you.
Oh wow. And
Thank you.
I'm very happy, and thanks to everybody for pitching. And maybe Joris, you want to say one word, 2 words, 3 words?
Yes, well, first of all, I want to also thank everybody else. I really enjoyed, this was for me the first time that I saw theirs as well. Yeah, very cool to see all these ideas. And that's why I'm also honored to have come out the winner. So that's really nice. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to going to Berlin in the fall / almost winter, something like that. Excellent, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you to the jury, online and offline. And thank you to everyone who participated. The 4 pitches, I enjoyed them all very, very much. Thank you for joining us. And I hope to see you again at some point. So bye, take care. Okay, so that was almost all the time we have. So we had a pretty complex program today, obviously, with 2 longer conversations and also with the Falling Walls Lab competition in the middle. I hope very much that this program helped you to think a little bit more about what innovation means, not just in the German context, but also in the German-Dutch and European context. and even in the geopolitical context. And I hope also that you saw that innovation is something that sounds easy, simple, and snappy, but it's actually pretty complex. What we saw is that it has complex political implications. We started this program with talking about the Innovation and Technology Pact between Germany and the Netherlands. And we saw already that this is also deeply embedded in European ideas of what innovation is, why innovation matters. But then we saw later on that innovation actually happens every day, and that there are young and sometimes also not so young entrepreneurs who try to innovate, and also then to go to the market with their innovations. And we saw in the Q&A on the 4 pitches that this is actually not a simple task. Having a good idea and selling a good idea are very, very different things. And at the end, we saw how everything can come together when Peter van Harten gave us his 2 cents on what innovation means actually in the Dutch-German European context. He focused on smart industries, which are probably really at the center, or at least take center stage in the public debates about innovation in the political setting. But you could easily expand the picture and talk about other aspects of innovation, and not just in the smart industry field. I think we can wrap it up for today. And I thank everyone who was a part of this program, the pitchers, the jury, my conversation partners, Moritz and Peter. But I also want to thank everyone who was involved behind the scenes. There's a large staff that puts these kinds of events together. And I think that the DIA colleagues did a fabulous job in facing and then managing and finally mastering the challenges of a hybrid live and Zoom event. I wish everyone a nice day, and if you are interested in watching this again, it will be available on YouTube. And this is not the only event that's available on YouTube from now on. You can also watch the other 2 events we had this week as part of our 25th anniversary festival week. So if you're interested in Dutch-German political relations or in the implications of Dutch-German memory culture, please visit the DIA programs. I'm pretty sure you will enjoy them. Please stay tuned. Join us again. Bye. Take care.